The church fell deathly silent as Daniel's voice cracked at the altar. You stammer. I can't marry you." Rosie Bennett stood frozen, veil still covering her face, the words echoing like gunshots through 200 shocked guests. Then the doors exploded open. Heavy footsteps on marble. A man nobody invited walking down the aisle like vengeance personified. When Jeung Jii lifted Rosie's veil with tattooed fingers, his dangerous eyes softened into something that looked like salvation. The wedding hall had been filled with anticipation just seconds before. 200 guests. Family, friends, co-workers from the community center where Rosie devoted 60 hours a week, all waiting for the kiss that would seal her future. Instead, they got devastation. Daniel's hand trembled as he lifted Rosie's veil, not with excitement, with fear. His face had gone pale, sweat beading on his forehead despite the church's air conditioning. You stammer," he whispered, but in the awful silence, every syllable carried to the back pews. "I can't marry you." The words detonated like bombs. Rosie's bouquet, white roses her mother had insisted on, baby's breath woven through, shook violently in her hands. Her speech impediment, the stutter she'd worked years to control through therapy and breathing exercises, the one that only surfaced when she was exhausted, emotional, or terrified. That stutter was why her groom was rejecting her. At the altar, in front of everyone, Daniel actually stepped back, away from her, like her voice was something contagious he couldn't risk catching. Gasps rippled through the church. Rosie's mother stood halfway up from the front pew, hand over her mouth. Daniel's father looked furious. Bridesmaids whispered frantically to each other. Rosie couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process that this was actually happening. 5 years with Daniel. 5 years of being the patient girlfriend while he figured things out. 5 years that ended with public humiliation. She opened her mouth to say something. Asterisk, what could she possibly say? Asterisk. But the stutter was there, waiting to betray her again, to prove Daniel's cruel point. Then the church doors exploded open. The crash echoed like thunder. Every head whipped around. A man entered, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He wore an expensive black suit tailored to perfection, emphasizing broad shoulders and a lean, powerful frame. Tattoos crawled up his neck in intricate Korean designs, dragons and symbols that spoke of violence and power. His face was striking, sharp jawline, dark eyes that scanned the room with predatory precision, assessing threats with the ease of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. But it was the way he moved that froze everyone in place. Confident, unhurried, lethal, like a panther stalking prey. Like a king entering his domain, like someone who expected the world to bend and knew it always would. Whispers erupted, frantic and confused. Asterisk, who is he? Why is he here? Is this part of the ceremony? Asterisk. Daniel's face drained of color. Recognition flickered across his features. Recognition in pure, undiluted fear. Jeung Jii, though Rosie didn't know his name yet, walked down the aisle like vengeance personified. His footsteps echoed on marble, measured, deliberate, unstoppable. He passed shocked guests without acknowledging them, past Rosie's weeping mother, past the pastor who'd stepped back instinctively. His focus was singular, absolute, terrifying in its intensity. He stopped directly in front of Rosie, without asking permission, without acknowledging Daniel or the pastor or the 200 witnesses, without hesitation. Jii reached up with tattooed fingers and lifted Rosie's veil the rest of the way. Their eyes met. Rosie's breath caught in her throat. She knew this face. She knew this face. 2 years ago, behind her community center. Late night, taking out trash. A man bleeding out in the alley, surrounded by darkness and danger. Her finding him, making a split-second decision not to call police. Stitching his wound with shaking hands and a first aid kit. The way he gripped her wrist, eyes boring into hers with desperate intensity. How he'd whispered, "Thank you," in Korean accented English. How he'd disappeared before dawn, leaving only blood and questions. It was him. Recognition flashed in Jii's dark eyes. Not surprise, but confirmation. Relief. Certainty. Like he'd been searching for something precious and finally found it. His dangerous expression softened the moment he saw her face fully. The predator became something else. Something protective. Something that made Rosie's racing heart skip for an entirely different reason. "She is not leaving alone," Jii announced, his voice quiet but carrying through the entire church like a verdict. Not loud, not aggressive, but absolute, unshakable. The voice of someone who'd never been told no and wouldn't accept it now. "She is coming with me." Chaos erupted. Rosie's mouth opened. "Wait, I don't under..." Her stutter thick with panic and confusion. Jii's expression shifted immediately, his entire demeanor transforming from intimidating to impossibly gentle. He leaned closer, voice dropping so only she could hear. "You saved my life once." His eyes held hers, dark and intense and sincere. "Let me return the favor." He extended his hand, tattooed fingers, steady and sure, offering salvation she didn't understand. "Trust me, Rosie." He knew her name. This dangerous stranger who just crashed or ruined. Wedding knew her name. Around them, pandemonium. Her mother shouting. Daniel backing away, nearly tripping over his own feet. Bridesmaids shrieking questions. The pastor stammering about calling security. Guests pulling out phones, recording everything. But Rosie only saw Jii's hand, saw the certainty in his eyes that cut through her humiliation like a knife, saw the way he looked at her, not with pity or disgust or disappointment, but with something fierce and protective that made her chest tighten. Like her stutter didn't matter. Like Daniel's rejection was meaningless. Like she was worth interrupting an entire wedding for. Like she was worth saving. Rosie took his hand. The moment their fingers connected, electricity shot through her entire body. Jii's grip was firm, warm, grounding. He pulled her gently but decisively away from the altar, away from Daniel, away from the disaster her life had become 30 seconds ago. His men, she hadn't even noticed them, materialized from the shadows. 4 of them, all in black suits, all moving with military precision. They formed a protective wall between Rosie and everyone trying to follow, to stop them, to understand what was happening. "Let her go." Daniel's voice cracked. "You can't just. Who even are you?" Jii didn't turn, didn't slow, didn't acknowledge the question. He just kept walking, kept Rosie's hand in his, kept moving toward the exit with the confidence of someone who'd never been stopped in his life. Outside, 3 black cars waited. Expensive, bulletproof by the look of them, engines already running. Professional, organized, like this had all been planned. Jii opened the rear car door himself, helped Rosie inside with surprising gentleness, then slid in beside her. His men took the other vehicles. The moment the doors closed, they pulled away from the church, from the collapsed wedding, from the shocked guests, from Daniel's cowardice. Inside the car, silence. Rosie's wedding dress filled the back seat, layers of white tulle and lace that suddenly felt suffocating. Her veil hung crooked. Her makeup was probably ruined from the tears she'd been fighting. She was in a stranger's car. A dangerous stranger who just kidnapped her from her own wedding. She should be terrified. Instead, she felt safe. W.I. Rosie finally managed, her stutter thick with emotion. "Why did you do that?" Jii turned to look at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch all over again. "Because 2 years ago, you found me dying in an alley behind your community center." His voice was quiet, controlled, but emotion flickered beneath the surface. "You didn't call the police, didn't ask questions, didn't run when you saw the blood, and knew I was dangerous. You just helped me." His jaw tightened, a muscle jumping. "I've been searching for you ever since. To repay the debt, to thank you, to find the woman who showed me mercy when she had every reason to be afraid." He reached over slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he wiped a tear from her cheek with surprising gentleness. "And because I will not let you be thrown away by a man too weak to deserve you." Rosie couldn't speak, couldn't process. Her mind spun with questions. Asterisk, how did you find me? How did you know about the wedding? What just happened? Asterisk. But what came out was, who are you? Something dark flickered across Jii's face. "Someone who owes you everything." He paused. "And someone whose enemies just made a very dangerous mistake." "What enemies? What mistake?" "Daniel didn't reject you because of your stutter, Rosie." Jii's voice turned cold, dangerous. "He rejected you because someone threatened him. Someone who wanted you isolated, vulnerable, alone." The words hit her like ice water. "What?" "You've been in danger for weeks." Jii's hand clenched into a fist. "Your community center sits on disputed territory. Rival organizations want that land. They've been watching you, learning your patterns, waiting for the right moment." Rosie's head spun. That's insane. I work with tea-troubled kids. I'm nobody. You're the woman who saved my life." Jii's eyes held hers. "That makes you far from nobody, and it makes you a target." 2 hours earlier, Rosie Bennett had been filled with hope. Nervous hope, cautious hope, but hope nonetheless. She'd spent 5 years with Daniel. 5 years of being the understanding girlfriend. 5 years of family pressure. Asterisk, marry him already. "Rosie, you're not getting any younger star." Daniel was safe. Predictable. The kind of man who showed up on time and never made waves. He proposed on schedule, like checking a box on life's to-do list. Rosie had said yes because at 28, working 60-hour weeks in an underfunded community center, living in a studio apartment, watching all her friends get married and have babies. She was tired of being alone. She'd walked into that church believing she was starting a new chapter. Instead, she walked into a nightmare that somehow became something else, something dangerous, something that felt strangely like fate. What Rosie didn't know was that Jeung Jii had been watching her for 6 months, that he'd found her last spring, confirmed she was a woman who'd save him, and had been trying to find the right way to approach her ever since. What Rosie didn't know was that her community center had become a battleground in a war between criminal organizations, that Daniel's rejection had been orchestrated, that her wedding had been the perfect moment for rivals to strike. What Rosie didn't know was that the man now protecting her was one of the most feared figures in the city's underworld, and that by taking his hand, she'd just declared herself under his protection. In his world, that meant something permanent, something neither of them was prepared for. If this opening has your heart racing, hit that subscribe button now. Drop a fire in the comments if you're already obsessed. Yes, we are about to reveal the deadly truth about Daniel's betrayal and why Jii's enemies want Rosie dead. Whispers erupted as Jii reached the altar. Who is he? Why is he here? Should someone call security? Daniel backed away, terror naked on his face. He recognized something in Jii that everyone else was only beginning to understand. Danger, absolute and unquestionable. Jii ignored them all. His focus was entirely on Rosie. He reached up with tattooed fingers and lifted her veil slowly, deliberately, like unveiling something sacred. When their eyes met, Rosie's breath caught. She knew this face. 2 years ago, the bleeding man behind her community center, the one she'd stitched with shaking hands, the one she'd given water and helped hide before police sirens grew close, the one who disappeared into darkness before she could ask his name. "She is not leaving alone," Jii announced, voice quiet but carrying through the entire church. Not a question, not a request, a statement of fact. She is coming with me. Wait, I don't. Rosie's stutter surfaced in panic. Jii's dangerous expression softened immediately. You saved my life once. Let me return the favor. He extended his hand. Trust me, Rosie. Before Daniel could protest, before her mother could react, Rosie took his hand. Jii led her down the aisle, past shocked guests, out into sunlight. Black cars waited. Armed men. Professional precision. Her old life ended. Her new one began. The penthouse was luxury beyond comprehension. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, marble floors. Art that probably cost more than Rosie made in a year. She stood in the center, still in her wedding dress, feeling completely out of place. Why did you do that? She demanded, stutter barely controlled. Jii poured water, handed it to her. 2 years ago, you found me bleeding out behind your community center. You didn't call the police. Didn't ask questions. Just helped me. His eyes held hers. I've been searching for you ever since. To repay the debt. To protect you. Protect me from what? Daniel didn't reject you because of your stutter. Jii's voice hardened. He received threats 3 days ago. If he married you, you wouldn't live to see the honeymoon. Rosie's water glass shook. Why would anyone? Your community center sits on disputed territory. Rival organizations want that land for their operations. Jii opened his laptop, showed her surveillance photos, men watching her leave work, following her home, documenting her patterns. You've been in the middle of a war without knowing it. The room spun. I'm a nobody. I just work with kids. You're the woman who saved my life. Jii stepped closer. That makes you everything. And I won't let them touch you. 1 week later, Rosie insisted on returning to work. I see can't just hide. Those kids need me. Jii assigned guards, but she slipped away one evening, refusing to live in fear. At the community center after dark, finishing paperwork, she heard it. Footsteps. Too many. Too coordinated. Gunmen burst through the door, 5 of them masked, armed. Come quietly and you don't get hurt. Rosie didn't come quietly. She grabbed a chair, swung hard, used a fire extinguisher like a battering ram. Her stutter disappeared in pure survival mode, replaced by screaming fury. They wanted her? They'd have to earn it. Then Jii crashed through with his men, brutal, efficient, terrifying. The fight was savage, gunfire and violence she'd never imagined. When the last rival fell, Jii found Rosie behind her desk, shaking, blood on her hands. He dropped to his knees, checked her for injuries with shocking gentleness. You could died. His voice broke. I can't, he stopped, hands trembling as they touched her face. Rosie saw it then. This wasn't about debt. His eyes held something raw, desperate, real. I'm not sorry I went back, she whispered, but I'm glad you came. Something shifted. Fear became something else. Something neither expected. Jii eliminated the traitor, his own lieutenant who'd threatened Daniel, who'd wanted Rosie vulnerable to undermine him. With the internal threat gone, he faced a rival clan. Their demand, Rosie in exchange for peace. I would burn this entire city before I hand her over. Jii's declaration shocked his men. He was risking war for a woman. Rosie stepped forward. What if the C Community Center becomes neutral ground, protected by both clans, serving all neighborhoods? She negotiated directly with the rival boss, stutter present but voice unwavering. Her genuine desire to help, her courage facing dangerous men, earned unexpected respect. The rivals agreed. The war ended. 3 months later, the same church. Different groom. Rosie stood beside Jii, heart pounding for entirely different reasons. When he lifted her veil, his tattooed hands were impossibly gentle. You saved me twice now, he whispered. Once from bullets, once from a life without you. The pastor asked a question. Rosie's voice stuttered as she answered. I do. Jii smiled. The first real smile anyone had ever seen from the feared Mafia boss. He cupped her face tenderly. I love every word you speak, even the ones that take time. He kissed her as 200 guests cheered. The rejected bride had found her king. The end. Subscribe if this wrecked you. Share with someone who needs to know rejection isn't the end. It's redirection. Red heart, asterisk, asterisk.